Welcome to The Quiet Truth, where lay Catholics face the truth about a godless culture. I'm Tom Borek with today's installment, One is Less Than Two. During our last two installments, we've been talking about judging. The culture tells us to judge neither the sinner nor the sins. Herb and I agree to the extent that we encourage Catholics to spend time listening to sinners and non-believers without judgment. On the other hand, we insist on making judgments about sinful behavior. In our own heads and hearts, we must unequivocally condemn it, and when communicating with others, we must never encourage it and must discourage it whenever possible. Of course, the first step in making correct judgments is identifying the sinful behavior. Today we will begin examining some of the traditional arguments against voluntarily choosing to break up two-parent families. The secular culture strongly opposes judging these choices, but the one true church established by Jesus Christ and entrusted to the care of St. Peter and his successors demands it. Common sense demands it. Concern for the welfare of our children and grandchildren demands it. Now, before I can be labeled and reviled as a hater, let me begin by saying that I am a sinner. Most, if not all, of the sins that I will hint at today and condemn at a later date are no worse than sins I myself have committed. Let me also say that members of traditional families are also sinners, and many of them may have sinned as badly as I. Furthermore, I know some wonderful single parents and wonderful children raised by single parents. Many individuals find themselves facing the enormous challenges of single parenting through absolutely no fault of their own. Thank you for considering my defense, and feel free to proceed with the labeling and reviling. For most of human history, and throughout the Christian era, single-parent families were considered tragic. The death of a father could condemn the mother and children to poverty and even starvation, and the death of a mother was scarcely less problematic. To deliberately endanger children by depriving them of a parent was understood to be a truly reprehensible crime. A spouse who abandoned his or her family was obviously a villain. Engaging in sexual relations and producing a child outside of marriage tended to expose the child to the same sorts of dangers. One way to atone for this crime was for the parents to marry and create a strong, secure family. Accordingly, virtuous, God-fearing men and women made every effort to avoid creating single-parent families, and the culture supported them. In contrast, the modern secular culture glorifies single parenthood as a fine lifestyle choice that is appropriate whenever either parent chooses to leave the other, or even when one parent decides not to make an initial commitment to the two-parent family at all. Why the change? Why is the single-parent family no longer considered a tragedy to be avoided? There are two primary factors, and each factor reinforces the other. One is that the secular culture approves of single-parent families and strongly disapproves of any criticism of single-parent families. In the mid-20th century, true and fictional stories of courageous single parents became extremely popular. In the beginning, such fictional parents tended to be widows or widowers, or victims of unreliable or even evil spouses or ex-spouses. The stories often highlighted the difficulties facing single parents, the hard work and long hours involved in both earning a living and caring for a child. They would also show clownish, judgmental people who would express prejudice against the heroic parent. These stories began the process of silencing those critical of the single-parent movement, and paved the way for later stories in which the separation of the parents was not necessarily the fault of either parent, and the living situation was no longer considered tragic or even in some cases especially difficult. The second factor is that individuals are increasingly choosing to break up or not even to form stable two-parent families. As the number of single parents skyrockets, those parents themselves and their families and friends necessarily defend the institution. So in the 21st century, single parenthood is accepted and even praised by the media and freely chosen by millions of Americans. We must be wary, however, of just accepting this cultural message or following the crowd. In this series, Herb and I have already highlighted the tendency of the secular culture to embrace and promulgate extremely foolish and evil messages. And of course, everybody does it may be the quintessential mindless defense of adolescent and pre-adolescent foolishness. So, as Catholics obliged to avoid the near occasions of sin, we must ask ourselves, is the growth and acceptance of the single-parent lifestyle a good thing? Or is single parenthood a tragedy to be avoided? May there be circumstances in which choosing to create a single parent rather than a two-parent family would be sinful? Let's consider the case of a hypothetical father who we can call Max. He has a wife and two small children and has decided that he would be much happier moving out of the home and perhaps finding another woman. If we told him about how abandoning a family like that was considered a horrible crime in the Middle Ages, he might reply as follows: "Well, in the Middle Ages, my children might have starved to death if I left them, but now they will be fine. No one starves to death in 21st century America because, well, A, women have the same economic opportunities as men. So my wife can earn as much money as I can. She can become a doctor or a lawyer and earn big money. B, I will have to pay child support. And C, if for some reason neither of us can completely support the children, they can go on welfare." Max is correct in at least one sense. Today's American standard of living is so high that even children of unemployed parents can receive food stamps and aid to families with dependent children, and may actually have better nutrition, medical care, plumbing, and heating than an upper-middle-class family in medieval times. On the other hand, is that the standard we want for our children? That they won't starve? That they will live better than medieval peasants? Herb and I think not. We believe that a parent is obliged to love his children enough to at least try to give them lives that are as comfortable, safe, and secure as middle-class folks expect today. And moving out works against this goal. Supporting two households is always more expensive than living together. That's why the custodial parent nearly always ends up with a diminished standard of living, even when court-ordered child support is always paid, and always paid in full. Of course, many people do not make their child support payments on time, and some people don't pay at all for years. If you talk to these people, the non-custodial parents, many of them will tell you, truthfully, that they had periods of unemployment or extraordinary expenses that got them behind. It has been my experience, however, that most non-custodial parents have an idea of the lifestyle to which they are entitled, and they do not let child support payments interfere with that. I don't know anyone who eats beans 5 days a week or shares a bedroom with someone other than a lover in order to keep their children off welfare. In addition, the earnings of the custodial parent may be limited by her childcare responsibilities. As a single parent, it will be much more difficult and perhaps impossible for her to attend graduate school or pursue jobs that require extremely long hours. She's not likely to become a doctor or lawyer or a CEO. On top of that, she's probably going to have to pay for childcare that would otherwise have been provided freely by the other parent. So, Max, no, your kids won't starve, but it's very unlikely that they will live as well as if you had stayed with them and their mom. Leaving will hurt them financially, and you will never be able to make that up to them. They will know that. They will live with that for their entire lives. Their father left them to pursue happiness at their expense. I don't know how badly that will hurt them. I don't even know for sure that it will hurt them, but I know enough to know that a number of people have been scarred for life by that experience. Are you willing to take a chance on that? Here's another problem with leaving. Your kids will have less of your time, energy, and love. You can try to make it otherwise. You can pursue visitation or even joint custody. But you will never be able to fully make up for the fact that you don't live together on a full-time basis. Now, in theory, you could come close. Both parents could maintain fully furnished rooms for the children and spend approximately equal amounts of time with them. And one parent could always be the child care provider of choice for the other. Even in theory, however, it could still not work quite as well as when both parents are present in the same place at the same time. That is, where one parent can help Johnny with his science homework while the other one gives Becky a bath. But in practice, these arrangements don't work well at all. Ex-spouses frequently disagree. They are uncomfortable with each other. They don't cooperate well. They fight over visitation, and they'd rather leave the kids with a sitter than give the extra visitation to their ex. Professionally or personally, I've probably known 100 or more couples who have tried to make such arrangements work. I don't know any who have fully succeeded. What if Max does find another woman? What if he has additional children? His time with his older children will necessarily suffer even more. Now, Max will tell me that it doesn't matter, that the mother loves the children and cares for them so well that his absence won't matter. He may not say it out loud, but he will be thinking of all these successful single parents in secular fiction and of all their wonderfully well-adjusted children. But he is in error. Children of single parents are statistically more likely to engage in criminal behavior, to have mental health issues, to have poor employment records, and to fail in their own attempts at marriage and child rearing. Max, do you want your children to face those odds because of your decision? If you love them as you should, you couldn't possibly want that. So, to sum up, we've identified 2 disadvantages of breaking up the two-parent family: less money and less parental time with the children. Next time, we hope to address why the two-parent family is particularly important for Catholic parenting, and we will discuss the factors on the other side of the issue, those that sometimes weigh in favor of breaking up the two-parent union. Thank you for your kind attention.